Welcome back, everyone, to the Newt Tube. Today, we're going to be tasting some Riesling, and our special guest today is Thera Clark, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and kind of a little bit of her story before we get started here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I moved just recently to Canandaigua from Brooklyn. Been spending the last 16 years in Manhattan restaurant world. I was most recently at the Beatrice Inn. Prior to that, Carbone. So I've definitely, when I left here, I grew up in Victor, New York, lived in Rochester for a bit, and moved away about 16 years ago to learn about food and wine, and then sort of rediscovered what was happening in the Finger Lakes about 8 or 9 years ago when I was visiting, and sort of thought something really special is happening here. So it just, a series of fortunate events occurred during an unfortunate backdrop of COVID-19, where I was offered a position to move back and be the beverage director at the new lake house in Canandaigua. And it just, it was too perfect. So that is what I will be doing as of next week, getting things going there. And really excited to be working with all of the vineyards in the Finger Lakes, particularly with Red Newt. I'm very excited to be here with all of you today.
Great, it's great to have you. So today we are going to taste, well, I should also say we have some of the regular suspects: Heather, our social media director; Kelby, winemaker; Meg's assistant winemaker; me, Dave, me, and founding winemaker of Red Newt, owner. We have a couple of wines to taste, both from Bullhorn Creek Vineyards. We had the pleasure of working with Bullhorn Creek, which is a vineyard that was owned and operated by Steve Bond, just about 2 or 3 miles south of Red Newt, for a number of vintages, 12 and 13 being 2 of them. And it was a really unique, special site, a small vineyard, a little bit up off the Route 414, so around 700-800 feet of elevation. And it was planted to clone 90, which has kind of characteristically is relatively low vigor and small crops. And it was really a cool vineyard to work with. So we get a chance to taste a couple of those today. So let's kick it right off with this 2013. Cheers. That's delicious. Kind of raisin and quince, kind of really tight acidity, but voluptuous palate.
Acidity is fantastic. Caught me a little bit off guard, honestly. I wasn't expecting, you used the, you said it wasn't going to have that much vigor. I beg to differ. That's fantastic. Kelby, can you tell me a little bit, David, we were talking about the typicity of the soil here. Was that more gravelly, you said?
Yeah, I think it probably classes as Lansing, I think, if you want to go down the soil rabbit hole, but a gravelly loam, and really kind of a classic Finger Lakes topsoil expression that works well for any number of grapes, but certainly for Riesling.
Yeah.
I always remember this site being notable to me starting out at Red Newt and kind of learning on the fly for how exposed it felt. Like it really felt like you were almost like up on top of the world when you were in this little block of Riesling. It was kind of up on top of a hill, pretty high elevation, always really windy. It's probably higher elevation, or was higher elevation than anything else we worked with, I would guess.
Why was it called Bullhorn Creek? Do we know?
Bullhorn Creek runs through the property.
Ah, okay.
So a lot of the creeks that you see throughout Hector that are associated with the vineyards are actually the names of the creeks that run through the property.
Gotcha. Okay.
Why is the creek named Bullhorn Creek?
I know there's one for you.
Yeah.
And we have Newt Creek, we've decided.
Oh, Newt Creek, yes. That's the previously unnamed creek that runs past the Red Newt property. as far as we know, unnamed until a few weeks ago. Newt Creek.
Add it to Google. You know, what I love about this 2013 is that it's so easy to think of what I would be doing or having.
Mm-hmm.
You can just sit out on the porch right now and really enjoy this.
It's carrying, I mean, 13 was usually, I mean, it was a bumper crop year. We tend to think of 13, or if you're used to 13 Rieslings around the Finger Lakes, a lot of them were a little bit lighter bodied. But this one, between the acidity and just the way it's aged so nicely, really has quite a bit of, packs quite a punch. You know, it's not like a, you know, diffuse sort of expression of Riesling. It really, and you know, some of that's certainly the site. It was already low vigor, clone 90 on top of that. You know, sometimes known as the go broke clone, also helps. And then I remember this one in particular for. I managed to wrangle my spouse, Julia, one late night. I had my car up in those rows with the headlights beaming down the rows, and she helped me drop fruit as we were getting ready to pick. A fact that she reminds me of many times when she asks me for a favor. It has casts a long shadow in our relationship. But you know, it's kind of a classic thing that we do in many of our vineyard sites now. Where right before harvest, if we have the time, we'll go out and drop, kind of negatively select any fruit, and then we know that what comes in afterwards will be the clean fruit that we really want to work with, and we don't have to worry about sorting at the winery.
No, that's cool. It's honestly like we're talking about food pairings. It's like, you know, to your point, Heather, I was like trying to think of all the different ways I'd want to go with this, but just, I want something fatty. I want something rich, and I almost want like, yeah, I want something like creamy and like dense, and like I want fat with this. I would even like do something like if you're gonna go, you know, like scallops, something like that. That's got like a natural sweetness to it anyhow, because this has got that sort of really, really focused acidity. Like it's impossible to not want another sip of this. I've already had like 3 sips that I was going to spit. That's not happening.
What really strikes me too about like these Bullhorn expressions that we're tasting is at least like having moved forward, we rarely make anything in this sugar kind of level anymore. And this is something kind of unique about Bullhorn, because really like 10, 11 grams is a pretty hard balance point to hit just right. And a lot of the wines we work with now go a lot drier. So it's really nice to kind of see how that really, you know, kind of envelops it.
Mm-hmm. Usually 10 or 11 grams tastes too sweet to be dry and too dry to be off dry. But this is really, I mean, I just looked at the numbers and I was shocked to see that it's 11 grams.
Yeah, that's a good call. I'm shocked as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, how about this 2012? Well, it certainly shows the juxtaposition of vintage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit richer.
Right off the bat in the nose, too.
Yeah. There's more. It's more expressive, and sort of like it's more. The more fruit aromatics are jumping out, and whereas the 13, I'm getting. You're right. The juxtaposition is almost undeniable. It's wild.
It's fun reading the back label text, which was appropriate at the time that the wine was kind of gauged for release. A delicate honeysuckle in the nose, with hints of nectarine and quince on the palate. I think this is
nails it.
Aged into something much, you know, I think all of those hints have become overt, and perhaps more like pokes or slaps in the face instead. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, 2012 is a little bit of a warmer vintage. Is that correct?
Yes.
It was pretty warm, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of see that there's a little bit more kind of richness and I think a little bit more kind of flavor that may have developed in the grapes at that point. I'm also seeing, and I find this really great, just a little bit more of a tactile component to this one. It definitely plays on the palate a little bit more. And just really a beautiful kind of aged Riesling that's showing nicely, but certainly not like going past any really secondary characteristics for me at this point.
I like that you brought up mouthfeel here, because I feel like that's something a lot of times we forget to talk about. But that to me is one of the things in pairing wine that makes me determine where I'm going to go next with it. And you're right. There's a little bit, I wouldn't say richer, but softer, more silky, almost oily mouthfeel to it. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit of that sort of lemon pith sort of astringency that goes along with it, that fleshes it out. And I'm thinking back, Kelby, I don't think the winemaking was that much different between this 12.
Yeah, it'd be really close.
So I would say that those mouthfeel differences in mouthfeel are mainly due to just the warmer fruit, warmer vintage, more mature fruit, more easily extracted phenolics, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Harvest was probably around the same as well, or?
It might be quite
May
different.
have been, because 12 was that perfect vintage, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were picking remarkably early.
Oh, okay.
Megs, are you looking up one?
I can.
No, I've got it on my computer.
Okay.
Double up.
That was literally so long ago, I wouldn't remember. I don't remember.
Mm.
There's something just so beautiful in this aromatic. And it goes beyond, it's somewhere, I don't know, maybe it's just perfectly peaked between its primary and secondary notes, but
Yeah, it's right there on the needle, right there.
yeah, there's just this point. Oh,
I find this sort of subtle background of like orange marmalade, this sort of little bit caramelized and cooked citrus in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Really elegant.
They were picked about 10 days apart. The 12 was really early October, and the 13 was mid-October, which kind of, I mean, that's, in terms of like fruit ripeness, that's probably pretty close to one another between those two vintages.
But you do kind of get that marmalade, though. I get that. I wasn't able to put my finger on it, but now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that was. Honestly, again, from a food pairing perspective, I want something almost traditional. Like I don't want anything to get in the way of what I'm picking up on this, because I think you are getting that, like you said, that needle point between like secondary and tertiary. I almost don't want anything to get in the way. Like I would actually be so boring as to say, like I would just like throw some salmon on the grill and like like make a German potato salad and call it a day. Because it's that pretty. That's just me.
That does sound good. In fact, when we started here, I didn't mention to you, you're way ahead of us, Thera, that usually we wrap these up by talking about what we're going to have for dinner.
Sorry. I'm always thinking about food. I'm sorry.
You're making.
That's why we get along. It was.
There you go.
Maybe we.
Music. That's about it.
So, what do you have planned for your leftover wines tonight, Heather?
So once the heat ebbs a little bit, because that sun is shining beautifully bright, I actually have some shrimp left. So I'm actually gonna do just a real simple light Alfredo with some shrimp and toss in some vegetables from the garden.
That sounds great. How about you, Megs?
I'm doing one of my favorite meals in the world. It's a throwback to when I was a kid. I'm having currywurst tonight, so we're gonna get some snappy grillers on the grill, do a little bit of a curry sauce. I've got kind of a Viennese style coleslaw going right now, so I think that'll be just perfect with these.
Yeah. How about you, Kelby?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat a meal I stumbled into a couple weeks ago and loved, which I have a couple of really nice rustic, like Sicilian sausages that I'm going to grill up. And I had those over some grilled slices of bread with olive oil and mozzarella cheese and balsamic vinegar and some grilled hot peppers as well. Very like wine, I suppose like Italian wine country lunch from a couple weeks ago, but it was so good I have to go back to the well.
I love it.
Sounds great. Now, Terry, besides your salmon and German potato salad, anything to add?
Honestly, I sometimes instead of having a meal, I'll just kind of go like smorgasbord style and just get out like a bunch of charcuterie and olives and different things. And I think that's what's going to happen tonight. I think there's going to be a full-on just table full of food, and we'll see what happens.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm kind of course, as if you've been following these, and the weather is good, you probably know my broken record statement is I'm going to build a fire in the grill, and this is going to have, I think, a pork chop and some sort of like citrus orangish, glaze on the pork chop grilled. And I think I'm just going to throw in maybe some slices of potato and olive oil and salt on the grill to kind of get nice and a little bit charred and cooked, and call it even. Maybe some asparagus.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Oh, I have a question before we go. We don't really make Bullhorn anymore.
Yes, true.
True.
True. Yeah, Steve Bond retired from farming and sold the farm, and so our working with that particular vineyard block is no longer, but it's a great block of grapes, and we're lucky to have these wines and another vintage too right here in the tasting room. I have to remember which you can stop by and taste. You have a glass up here on the deck. We will be open for deck seating for glasses and bottles of wine cut this coming weekend, as well as retail. And of course, you can always order wines online, these and many others. We've kind of ravaged our cellar and library to bring about 50 or 60 wines up into the tasting room from current releases all the way back to, I think, 2009. So it's a lot of fun, and free shipping on 6 bottles or more. So thanks. With that, I think it's a wrap. And thanks, Thera, for joining us. And thank you for growing these beautiful wines if you're out there listening. And cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.